Starting a business in clothing, fashion, or textiles is incredibly different because as a new firm, you're not going to have scale. Let me explain what the problem is. You may have fantastic ideas, really new, cool designs. It means very little because you've got supply chain issues. So you approach a supplier who's used to dealing with lots of big customers who order in thousands. You go there as a small new startup and you say you want to order, let's say we make shirts, you want to order 10 shirts, 50 shirts. They're not even going to have a meeting with you. They don't want to hear it because it's a waste of time for them. But let's say you manage to convince them to have a meeting and supply you with shirts. The next problem you're going to have is that they're going to charge you an incredibly high price. So the price they're charging you, you see other retailers selling the same product for that price. So you're thinking there's no way you're going to have any profit margins. In fact, you'll make a loss on every unit you sell. The supplier appears greedy because they're quoting you a higher price. But in some ways, they're not entirely to blame. And the reason being is because if, let's say, they've got 2-3 large customers who are buying thousands of products from them every day, and you go in and you say you want 5 shirts, then they'll have to stop their production line to print your designs or to produce your designs, which means it'll increase their cost. So that's why they're charging you a higher price. Although I must say that often they charge you a significantly higher price than they really should do. And in some ways they're shooting themselves in the foot. And the reason I say that is because if a supplier has 2-3 or let's say 4 or 5 large customers, then it's a risk to that supplier too, because the customer has a bargaining power. And I'll give you an example. Marks and Spencer's, which is a clothing and food retailer in the UK, used to do this some years ago, whereby they would start purchasing large quantities from any given supplier, and they would increase the quantity that they order from them. So a supplier, let's say, had 50 customers. M&S then starts increasing their order, and the supplier is thinking, well, M&S is a big customer. Yes, I want to serve them because it's easy and they're buying large quantity. And that supplier would start getting rid of their smaller customers, and those smaller customers would go elsewhere. M&S on the other side would end up purchasing 80% of their capacity or even 100% of their capacity. Now the supplier is at their mercy because M&S would turn around and say, drop the price or we're not buying from you anymore. So the supplier has no choice. They have to drop the price. So that's what I mean. When a supplier chooses not to serve smaller customers because it means it's increased administration costs for them, yes, we see their point, but they're also not doing themselves a favor because they've got all their eggs in one basket or 2 or 3 baskets only. Whereas it would be beneficial if a supplier had 40, 50, 60 different customers. Yes, it increases their cost, but they also have bargaining power. So my point is, starting a business on a small scale in some industries is okay, but an industry like clothing, fashion is incredibly competitive, and you're not going to find suppliers that are willing to compromise. So you may have great ideas, wonderful designs. It means very little simply because the supply chain is not in your control. So the only lesson I suppose we can learn from this, and that lesson is for suppliers more than anybody else, is that they should give smaller fish, smaller players a chance, because it would also be beneficial for them in the long run. That's all.